So it seems that Games Workshop are trying to trim back on one of the many power imbalances for the armies without codexes. It looks like in an upcoming White Dwarf, every single army is going to have at least one faction-specific secondary. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking about a few more rules, these ones coming out of the upcoming White Dwarf, where it appears there's some interesting secondary objective cards included, 6 of them that seem to be targeting the armies without codexes out yet, or without codexes that appear to be clearly on the horizon. For example, Tau and Eldar armies don't have their secondaries revealed, but we know their codexes are just round the corner. There's also no Harlequin secondaries, yet more confirmation that they are indeed being rolled inside Codex Eldari, and it does appear that the Harlequins will be having their own set of secondary objectives within that. In any case, let's have a quick talk about faction secondaries, and then look at each of the new ones in turn. So secondary objectives were a new innovation in 9th edition. I think some people really like them. I do feel that they make the game a little bit more balanced at competitive play, but they certainly add a bit of complexity and do take a little bit of bookkeeping. Each army with a 9th edition codex seems to have got 3 or 4 more unique ones of their own, and in general I think the Games Workshop have kept themselves in check fairly well. Most of them tend to be fun and fluffy ones, a bit situational or just kind of underwhelming, but if you do get lucky and you do get a really strong or reliable one within your army, it can actually be a fairly decent boost at a competitive level, as it just means that you're likely to score a few more victory points than your opponent. It's really not going to matter too much in the majority of games, but if it turns out to be super close, then an easy secondary could easily swing a defeat into a victory. Maybe one of the most obvious examples of this is the Dark Angels one, the one where they can simply park a really hardy objective secured unit like a Deathwing Terminator squad on a home objective, and if the opponent can't take them off, then they score 15 points if they hold it all game long. Plus, above and beyond that, I believe that currently some of the Space Marine armies can double dip on secondary objectives. I believe, say, taking that Dark Angels one, and then for example Oaths of Moment out of the main book, potentially giving them 2 very easy ones to score, even if the book ones don't really work out. In general, I really don't have too much against these faction-specific secondaries. They can be quite fun, with your armies going after really specific things, say for example Deathwatch killing Xenos, or Death Guard corrupting objectives, but it does feel just like a spectacularly easy way that a lazily written one could really mess with game balance, and I feel there's something that Games Workshop needs to be really careful about whenever they release a new codex. I'm not saying that that's the be-all and end-all of secondaries though. The book ones can certainly favour some armies over others, and I think that they do. It's kind of hard to create perfect balance between armies that can be anything from entire squadrons of super heavy walkers to huge hordes of ground-pounding troops. In any case, generally if you're a faction that don't have them yet though, you are disadvantaged, as you basically have less options than the armies that do. Admittedly, the options might not be very relevant and might be kind of rubbish, but at least theoretically, even if they are quite niche in application, sometimes they might be the best thing to pick, and if you don't even have that chance, you're going to be at a small disadvantage compared with your opponents. I'm going to guess that this is what's prompted Games Workshop to release these ones in White Dwarf, and I feel like it's quite a nice way of throwing a bone to the armies without codexes yet, and giving them another interesting option for scoring some points in the meantime. So let's take a look at what we've got, and a rumoured change to the Space Marine ones. So first up, let's start with one for Demons and Chaos Space Marines. Incidentally, apparently these cards come from White Dwarf. There seems just to be one for each faction that I've seen currently, and I'm afraid I don't know any of the rules that support these. There may be other interesting clarifications hidden inside the magazine, but it does seem fairly clear what they do just from the cards. In any case, the Chaos Demons one is called Malefic Terror. It's a no mercy, no respite one, and it's quite a fun and fluffy one, where you get extra victory points for enemy models fleeing. Each turn you can score up to 4 victory points, 1 victory point each for each model that flees from the enemy army, and 1 victory point if you kill a unit, and if you're able to roll a 2d6 that equals or betters their current leadership. That last one could be pretty useful as well, as it would take into account any negative modifiers that you can stack on them. I feel like this one's always going to be pretty situational. Some armies just really don't care about leadership, like Knights, and it seems unlikely that you're ever going to make Space Marines run away en masse. If you are playing a fairly hoardy, non-leadership immune faction though, this could be doable, and it's perhaps quite an interesting way of getting a bit more value out of the morale phase, even if it's certainly not going to be one that you want to take against every army. For Chaos Marines, we have one called the Long War. This again is a no mercy, no respite one. This one's all about killing enemy units off objectives and taking them. You get 1 victory point for each enemy unit that you kill off an objective, one that was within 3 inches of the marker before it died, and then a bonus 2 victory points if you've taken any objectives from the opponent that turn, up to a maximum of 3 victory points per turn. I feel like that one's okay. It could be quite good in certain games like Stranglehold, where that might well just be happening anyway, where people repeatedly punch each other off the midfield objectives. Though it does seem one that you're fairly unlikely to max. If you go first, for example, you're going to find it quite hard, I think. So I do feel like it's a secondary objective that you could just pick, and it's basically going to reward you more for playing the primary mission, killing enemies off objectives, and taking them for yourself. Next up we have Imperial and Chaos Knights. The Imperial one is Yield No Ground. This one's a battlefield supremacy one. You score it at the end of your turn, but you can't score it in the first battle round. You score up to 5 victory points per turn by achieving each of these 3 objectives. 2 victory points if at the end of the turn you control more than half of the objectives on the board with Imperial Knight units. 2 victory points if there are no enemy units at all within your drop zone. And 1 victory point if none of your knights moved closer to your own board edge and didn't fall back this turn either. I think the first one might potentially be one of the easiest. Again, if you are able to just repeatedly move some armigers onto some midfield objectives, you're really quite likely to take half of them. The clearing enemy units one I also don't think is too bad. The enemy is going to have to make effort to put units there, and hopefully that should be the best place where you're going to be good at killing them back. The last one seems kind of easy to just make happen by accident once or twice. However, usually falling back can be quite a good move for Imperial Knights. They can freely fall back, shoot and charge. So by opting not to fall back for a victory point, you might be losing yourself a fair bit of flexible shooting that could then target something else other than the unit that was in engagement range. In any case though, I think with such a high 5 victory point max per turn, this does seem to give you at least a reasonable chance of maxing it out, though I feel it might be one of those secondaries that you tend to max out if you're kind of winning the game anyway, and you might struggle to if you're not. For the Chaos Knight one, theirs is Path of Destruction. This one's a no mercy no respite one, and it's scored at the end of each battle round. It's basically a killing units one. You get 1 victory point if you kill a unit with a Chaos Knight that stood in your own deployment zone, 1 for killing a unit with a Chaos Knight that's somewhere in the midfield, more than 3 inches away from the deployment zone, and then 1 for killing a unit while your knight is in their drop zone. That means that you're only getting up to 3 per turn, and as you're not going to have any knights in the opponent drop zone turn 1, it's basically impossible to max. I feel like provided the enemy's got a reasonable amount of units, you should be able to score pretty reliable 8 or so victory points out of this. But unless you're getting across the board to the enemy drop zone super quick, then you're not going to be scoring much more. Overall, out of these two, I think I do like the Imperial Knights one a fair bit more than the Chaos one. Finally, we have the Guard and the Tyranids. The Astra Militarum one is a very simplistic one called For the Emperor. This one's a Purge the Enemy one, and it's essentially just try and kill 3 units per battle round. You get 1 victory point for each, but you can't score more than 3 VP each turn. Again, like the Chaos Knight one, I feel like this is one that you're just easily going to score some points for without even trying, but again it's going to be a very tricky one indeed to max. On turn 1, probably most of the army might be in hiding if you've got some serious guns. Maybe a Manticore could have a go at killing a unit, but it doesn't seem guaranteed. And as the game winds down and both of you have a lot less units on the board, again that's going to be less kills. Again, against an army with a fair amount of units, I could see you getting a good 8+ with this, but you're really going to struggle to get into the very high numbers. Finally, we have the Tyranid one, which is Synaptic Insight. This one's one for killing models, not units, and you add them towards your Synaptic kill tally. You need to make these kills with Synapse units, which does kind of limit you. It's going to be things like Hive Tyrants, Tyranid Warriors, maybe the Swarm Lord perhaps, and you score points for the bigger models killed. You get 1 point for something with 3 to 5 wounds, 2 points for a model with 6 to 9 wounds, or 3 points for a model with 10 wounds or more. Dedicated transports don't count towards your tally, and you get 3 victory points if you get a kill tally of 4+ per battle round. Finally, it's also limited to a maximum of 12 victory points for the battle, though I must admit I'm not sure it's all that relevant, as I think that most people are going to struggle to kill that consistently with just the right units on every single turn of the game. Overall, I just don't really see this one being very good in the first place. Synapse units don't tend to make up the bulk of the army, and even if you've got quite a lot of them, you do need the right enemy army to make this work as well. Maybe a lot of vehicles that aren't transports, or an absolute ton of 3-wound models on the board like loads of Terminators or Gravis or something. Unless basically taking nothing but Synapse creatures becomes the next big thing for Tyranids, I'm not sure this is going to see much play. Overall, I think that most of these secondaries are fairly well executed though. They're not going to give huge advantages to their own armies, but they might be niche ones that reward you for certain styles of play or certain matchups. I think perhaps one of my favourites might be the Imperial Knight one. Even if it is locked out of Battle Round 1, there's really quite a lot of decent ways to score it, and it seems likely that you could rack up a fair tally over the course of the game. Finally, there is just one small rumour that the Space Marine secondaries might well be changing in the next chapter approved. This one not backed up with anything besides hearsay at the moment, but it seems perfectly reasonable that they might be limited from taking 2 secondaries, one from the main codex and one from their codex supplements. It'd certainly be a small nerf to the chapters that have them: Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Death Watch, Dark Angels and Black Templars, and maybe more so to the Dark Angels than anyone else, as their secondary objectives just seem to be really strong. I'm not sure I'm really that bothered either way about this though. It kind of seems fair in principle. No other faction gets to take 2 unique secondaries, they have to take more out of the book, and it doesn't really seem to make sense that Space Marines should be treated any differently just because they happen to have more books per army. So anyway, let me know what you think of these new secondary objectives. Is the one for your own faction one that you could see yourself using, or not? If you'd like to keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly try and cover any new changes to the game on the channel. I do tend to have new videos coming out pretty much every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention one way in which you can help support, and that's my Element Games affiliate link down in the video description. Element Games is a UK-based discount retailer. They give between 10 and 20% off Games Workshop products, and if you click the link before buying, a very small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics without costing you any more whatsoever. Can just be a way to help support the channel while buying models if you are thinking about ordering in something anyway. For people over in the USA, there is also an Amazon link down there as well. That works in much the same way. Click the link, buy literally anything whatsoever, and a small amount goes to help support the channel. A massive thank you to you guys who have been using those links, it really does help out quite a lot. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.